Flash. Ah.
Oh dear.
It saves every one of us.
Oh my God.
Do you know the film Flash?
No.
The Queen
Right.
soundtrack.
Yeah. Move on.
Flash
quick.
saves every one of us. Does
Okay.
Flash
Save every
one of us?
This is a very tenuous link.
It's not. That's great.
All right.
That's fantastic.
Well, you never used to use Flash very much at all because you were scared of it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about now. Should people use it all the time? Should people not use it all the time? I mean, everyone likes the phrase natural light photographer.
Yeah.
I would call myself a natural light photographer because I'd much prefer natural light. It has a nice look, I think, than using artificial light because it seems to kind of blanket all the lights and shadows.
But every
the
now
drama.
and then, you need one.
Every now and then, you definitely need one. Especially the last few events I've done.
Weddings.
It's been really difficult lighting with bright sunshine behind them.
Yeah.
There's no choice but to use flash.
Because in certain venues, you've got little choice sometimes, I suppose, as to where you take your group shots, etc.
Yeah. And with my DSLR, my D850, it was okay. I had a good regime set up.
Yeah.
But with mirrorless cameras, it changed everything for me. I couldn't figure it out. It was so inconsistent. I couldn't get any good results with it. And it took me a long time to figure that out. So this is kind of what this video is. So we've got my Nikon SB700 versus
the Godox V1.
Right. So that's a lot newer technology, I believe. Well, I've had this. Seems like I've had it forever.
Yeah, probably then.
So this is going to be a comparison. Which one is better? If you didn't have any, which one would you get? And it's also a how-to guide on how to use basic flash photography indoors and outdoors.
We're not experts here, so just
we're not experts.
The how-to is probably maybe stretching it a little, but we'll go for it.
Using TTL, does that work anymore? Through the lens, that's what it stands for.
It does indeed.
I looked at it. Did you look at it as well?
I knew already because I'm older than you. TTL, manual, bounce, direct.
Yeah.
Try all of that.
That's the thing with flash. There's so many options for creativity. You don't have to have it on top of the camera. You can have it behind, to the
little
side.
domey things on or little flash.
You got the curtain things for the Godox.
Does a round Godox V1 head.
Beat to the rectangle.
Beat to the rectangular funny
this
little
has got
Nikon
the built-in things. There's so much, and it is overwhelming for anyone. I think it's overwhelming for me still. I'm still okay with it, but I think there's a lot more to discover and get more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Let's
get testing.
Jolly good.
And come back in a flash.
God.
Okay, so outdoor. The first thing to do for both the Nikon and the Godox flash, you have to set up the camera in the same way to be most effective for using flash. So the first thing to do is, in our experience, is to turn off auto ISO, because the auto ISO seems to have some kind of confliction, not knowing what to do. Custom menu, you need to turn D9, which shows preview, off, and that is the same reason. It can't figure out what the flash is going to do. As with any camera in the past, you'd expose correctly for the background, for the brightest light. In this case, the sky, which it usually is outdoor. So in this case, we've set them both to the same settings. 800th per second, 2.8, ISO 100. Unfortunately, it wasn't bright sunshine, which I'd like to demonstrate the flash capabilities. And of course, we've used the same camera, same lens, same settings, same profile, same white balance, same metering. We checked everything that was the same. So this is a shot without the flash. It's not actually that bad. But in this overcast day, it isn't doing too bad on lighting up my face here. But let's see what flash can do to make it better. So for the first shot, we've used TTL, which is the flash's automatic mode. And it should work out what flash it needs, what settings a power flash needs to make a good shot. Ideally, just turn the flash on TTL and it should correctly expose. So the Godox tends to put a more powerful light on the subject. And for me, that's too much. It's kind of overdone it. The Nikon seems to be more pleasant and more natural looking, but there isn't much in it. It's very similar. So through our tests, we found that the TTL seems to overcompensate. But then you could always use the exposure compensation on the flash to deal with that on TTL mode. For these next series of shots, we switched to manual to try and really optimize the conditions here. It's a lot more pleasing than what the TTL prescribed, I would say. This is a much more balanced exposure in my opinion. The TTL looks like a 1:1 setting there. The Nikon versus the Godox are very similar. It's hard to compare them, I would say they're so close. So this is the exposure without using flash. This is without flash. And you can see it's fine. I mean, it's an overcast day. The light isn't enough on my face, although there is shadows there. But let's see what we can do with using flash. This is about 6 meters away now, whereas before the portrait mode was about 2.5, 3 meters away. So let's see what 1:1 flash could do in this situation. Okay, so you can see with 1:1 flash, even at 6 meters, it really does help the exposure on the face. It's a lot more brighter, a lot more cleaner image. And you can imagine if the sun was stronger, 1:1 might struggle at this distance. For this, it's turned out quite well. And they're almost the same. You can see the difference in light here between without using flash and with. And as you can see, much better balance of light with flash, even at this distance. Well, it depends on your preference. I actually think without the flash, it looks a lot more natural. It has a better dynamic for me. I mean, this could be edited, of course. So I'd always prefer not to use flash because I prefer this kind of look. So this is now 1:2, half power on both the Nikon and the Godox. And it's a more pleasing image for me. And again, they're almost identical. I can't tell the difference between them. But if I compare it with 1:1, you can see that the half power is a lot more natural. So then we selected a 1/4 power on both flashes. And again, I think it's more of a natural image. Of course, it gets more darker. But again, with editing, with the dynamic range of these cameras, you can do so much. So if you compare it to the 1:1, for me, the 1:1 is a lot more harsh of an image, whereas the 1/4 power is a lot more natural but filled in. So the 1/4 power on the right is very similar without using flash, but it just fills it in a bit. And that's kind of what you want in this situation for my style of photography, is just to fill in those shadows and make it a bit more airy and bright. So now we switch to TTL on the Nikon and the Godox. And again, very similar, if not the same results. Although we find that the TTL has overexposed it. As a go forward preset, you would automatically have TTL -1 or 2. So for me, I would prefer the half power over the TTL in this lighting conditions. Of course, every lighting condition outside will be different. So in this scenario, we're shooting indoor. There's a lot more you can do indoors than outdoors. The light from outside is always brighter, usually, than indoors. So this is where you'll need flash. There's quite a few more options that you can do indoors because of the walls and the ceiling. So you turn off the flash and then you adjust the settings for the outdoors, which makes the subject a lot darker indoors, obviously, because the light is struggling to reach the subject's faces. So in this scenario, we switch to TTL with the flash pointing directly at the subject, just to see how it works. The Nikon here has actually underexposed my face a bit, but it has improved, obviously, from without using flash. But as you can see, the Godox has quite used too much power and it's overexposed, but this is with the flash directly on the subject, indoors, which I don't really recommend, but we wanted to see what would happen. So this is with the flash bounced directly vertical. So we move the flash directly off the person to pointing at the ceiling. And in this case, the ceiling was a nice white, so it's a great deflector and reflector of the light. In this case, the Nikon has done a lot better. It's a lot more pleasing exposure. And compared to the Godox, it's okay, but it's underexposed now. However, if you use the Godox dome direct, which you're meant to do with them really, pointing directly at the subject, it does a really good job of evening up the exposure. Whereas the Nikon, the less quality cover, it's done okay, but it's not as good as the Godox using the covers. So for this final shot indoors, we angled the flashes at 45 degrees, pointing towards the subject above them, and this has proved to be the most pleasing of the exposures and how to use the flash. As you can see, the Nikon here has done a better job in this scenario. Brighter but levelled off, whereas the Godox is a bit underexposed, although you can always adjust that with the compensation. I'm sure with different settings they could prove to be exactly the same as outdoors again. And as you can see here, these are both Nikon now. Before, without the flash, and then the 45 degree angle with the flash. it's a lot nicer. Of course, what you can do, because the dynamic range is so good on these cameras, if you haven't got a flash or don't feel confident or haven't got it right, you can always fill in the flash. Obviously it has a different look and not so ideal. You can even select the subject and then do that from there too. Again, it doesn't always create the ideal look. Of course, then you can add a brush. So you can always use a brush and fill it in yourself a bit. The edited picture I've just done on the left and the 45-degree flash. And as you can see, the edited photo is a better exposure. It has a slightly strange look because it's a bit unnatural. So if we edit the 45-degree flash one, you see you only have to raise the exposure a bit on the subject and it's a lot more pleasing image. All I've done with that is raise the exposure on the face. With this one, it's a lot more tricky and it looks a lot more harsh.
But yeah, so what did you think of the results?
Well, first of all, to even get TTL running on this, I had to update to the latest firmware. It's a bit of a pain, to be honest, to update the Godox. You've got to download a certain program depending on what product you're trying to update, because they've got 3 different types of program. Got the firmware, updated it. But then I think overall, I thought the results were pretty similar.
Yeah, so visually, if I put them side by side, I could just about tell maybe, but it was so similar, which I'm surprised at actually. I thought the Godox would be a lot better because it's newer.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it would.
Well, you're Nikon through and through.
This is really old though.
Yeah, I thought you'd think, oh, the Nikon's going to be great and better than that cheap
But
Godox
everyone
thing.
online, especially on blogs, say that everyone swapped to the Godox V1.
Yeah.
But effectively they're the same. And with the TTL was slightly better on this, but then with a slight adjustment with exposure, it's the same. So for quality-wise, of picture quality, they're the same. But then what else does it come down to? It comes down to price. So this is a bit more. This was £70 more. I've just looked today. Yeah. But then it comes down to accessories. So the Godox has a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot of. They've got quite a clever sort of circular rings that are magnetic that you can put on.
Yeah.
So you can put grids, the shutters, dome. So it does come with a lot of accessories that are quite cost effective.
Also the AD200 Pro.
Yeah, so it's a bigger, stronger.
That's a portable, stronger light, and it sort of hooks up. You know, the whole system seems a lot more easier to use.
I've got a transmitter on this that will obviously control this off camera, but also I've got a Godox receiver that you can put on the bottom of any flash, say the Nikon.
Right.
So that if I wanted to use both of these, I could with the Godox transmitter. Got 4-channel transmitter controlling this, but also that with a Godox receiver on it. So, but there you go. You got the Nikon creative lighting system, I think, which is good.
Yeah. That comes with rechargeable batteries built in it.
Yeah.
But then to replace that, if you want a spare, that would probably be quite expensive.
And if you are a Godox owner and you haven't updated your firmware, you have to take that out, otherwise updating the firmware doesn't work.
That's so weird.
I know. That's a super important tip there for nothing.
Yeah.
Take your battery out, otherwise it will not work.
That's crazy.
There you go.
So sometimes, I use rechargeable batteries in mine, which is fine. I just charge them up, and they're quite cheap, and they last a long time. I've never run out of battery. I've been fine. I've done a full
this
day.
This lasts for ages as well, the battery on this.
Yeah. So and they're about the same weight. That's slightly bigger, maybe tiny bit heavier.
Do you reckon the round? Does that make a difference, you think, rather than rectangular? We couldn't see any difference.
I couldn't see any difference.
It's a bit of a marketing feature. I mean, it makes sort of sense that you give you a more even light than a rectangular one, but we didn't see any difference in it.
No. So I've done a few events lately and it's been really sunny, as in blindingly sunny.
Yeah. And
I've had to put the sun behind them, so I had to do that. And the 1:1 wasn't powerful enough.
Right. I must admit, I've noticed that. However powerful these are, put it on 1:1 when you're outside. It's struggling if you've got any distance to the subject.
Sometimes it's like a candle to the sun. You can't really deal with it.
Which is understandable.
Yes. Oh, that's the other thing, right? So I've been struggling for ages on these mirrorless system. It wouldn't go above 250.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't. And then you pointed out.
So if you got it, say the camera shut on set on 1/1000, as soon as you turn the flash on, it overrode the camera and turned it down to 1/250th or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I pointed out.
You can change it in the menu.
There's like a little, there's 1/200th or 2/50th, whichever it is, with an asterisk.
Why isn't that the default setting?
Which gives you this high.
So then you can change your shutter speed, change the ambient light. Because obviously it doesn't change what the flash is on.
No.
But that was really handy.
Yeah, you're welcome. invoices in the post or on the email.
It's all these things though you never had to think about before with DSLRs.
I think we've both been a little bit scared of using.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need flash because
Yeah.
I still prefer actually using a 1.8 50. Like I sent you an example of the indoor wedding cake when they were cutting the cake. I did one with the flash and then I did one with a 50 on its own. I prefer the one with the 50. Even though on their faces the flash is slightly better, but because of the dynamic range of the 50 and the low ISO, I bumped it up. Very similar photos. I don't think they'd be able to tell the difference between them. But I can, and I just can't like the look of it. It has a natural more look. With flash, you can't help but kill the atmosphere.
It's still a look that some people would like.
Yeah, look, genuinely.
Because they tend to often be used to seeing those where someone's used a fill light. So
you see lots of professionals only use flash.
Yeah.
So they have different flash setups, and that's a look that they have, and that's what their selling point is, and that's what they like to do. So it's genuine. It's an artistic license, basically.
Yeah.
But indoors, I remember the evening disco. TTL didn't work. It was all over the place. Every shot was completely different. You couldn't deal with the lights, all the different changes. So then I switched to fully manual.
I mean, using these on manual actually is pretty easy because you've got the flash compensation. So if you pick 1/16 or 1/8 or a quarter, half, full on, and then you just quickly see what the results are like, and then you can dial it up or down. And once you've found a setting that works, just go for it. Whereas the TTL will be a bit erratic probably as lighting changes around it.
Yeah, so that's kind of our how-to guide and the comparison. But if you didn't have either of them, which one would you get?
This one.
Why?
Cheaper, sexier, more accessories. I think it's got a better wireless range as well.
Much better wireless range and wireless channels.
Yeah, so
it's just better kit overall.
Yeah.
Same for me. I've used this for years. I'm happy with it. But if I didn't have either, I'd go for the Godox system. There you go.
But we both learned, so it's just interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We both learned something doing it.
Yeah.
Perhaps, and a bit more confident now about using them.
If anyone has an advice on how to improve what we've done, we're open to,
I'm sure we'll get it.
Here.
And we never ask people to subscribe or like, because it's a bit corny, isn't it? However, we're almost getting near to the magic 1,000 subscribers limit, so it would be really nice if we could get to
We're only about 50 off now, I think, so yeah. But I don't know what happens when that does.
I think you probably get an email saying
we get a medal.
And that's
pretty good. Hope it recorded.
Yeah.